We're here with Ray Chambers, the UN Special Envoy for Malaria. Thank you for joining us today. And my first question is, if you could please tell us about why research and development for new malaria tools is so important for efforts to eradicate the disease.
I think research and development for new tools is at the heart of dealing with malaria. As you know, malaria has killed over 1 million children a year for decades, and it's been the interventions over the last 3 years that have begun to reduce that level of death, and most of those interventions came about as a result of research and development. You know, it was only 6 or 7 years ago with the bed net that the people who used the nets had to re-dip them in insecticide every 6 months. And most people couldn't be bothered to do that. Now we have long-lasting insecticide-treated bed nets as a result of research and development that last more than 5 years, so people don't have to go back and re-dip them. With the spraying, we've come up with so many different types of insecticide in anticipation of resistance. And it was research and development that brought that about. And you know, 15 years ago, the drug of choice for malaria was chloroquine. The parasite falciparum is such a wily critter that chloroquine no longer works at all on falciparum. But artemisinin came along, which was discovered emanating from the Chinese wormwood plant. Without researching hundreds of potential successors to chloroquine, we wouldn't have artemisinin today. So research and development is at the heart of the optimism that we now feel, where we can hope to achieve close to 0 deaths from malaria by 2015. And that translates into saving 1 million lives a year. But in addition to that, malaria has cost the continent of Africa over $40 billion a year against the GDP, and that amount will be saved. So there's a real return on investment. And I think we've invested about $6 billion over the last 4 years to bring about where we are today, and to get a return of $40 billion per year on an investment of $6 billion. I can't think of a greater return on investment than that.
Wonderful. And can you talk a little bit about some of the new tools to fight malaria, such as vaccines, diagnostics, new drugs, that you think will be making a huge impact against the disease in the coming years?
And we're seeing technology progress across the board. With rapid diagnostics, we're now able to very simply and inexpensively determine whether or not a child has malaria. Right now, almost 80% of the children with fevers who don't have malaria are diagnosed with malaria. And so we're not treating what their real illness is. We're treating them for malaria. We're wasting the malaria medicine. Now with the advent of rapid diagnostic testing, we can more certainly determine what the cause of the fever is and treat it with an antibiotic instead of the more expensive artemisinin combined therapy. I don't think you're going to have privacy.
Sorry. That's fine. We can edit around that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead.
Okay.
And we're looking at bed nets that are stronger, have different types of insecticide, so that if we have resistance to one type of insecticide, we can go to another in a particular area, and that's where the insecticide would last longer on the nets. With drugs, we're really excited about more efficacious medication against vivax malaria as well as falciparum malaria, and we're hoping instead of 2 doses a day over 3 days, can we come up with a single dose intervention? So continued R&D is so significant to what we're aspiring to as we take this long climb up over the next 5 years to try and reach zero deaths from malaria.
My final question is, can you tell us a little bit about the role of the U.S. government in these efforts to develop new malaria tools?
You know, the U.S. government, despite its fiscal constraints and economic hardships, still today looms as the most important leader. As the U.S. government makes a decision to fund R&D or other interventions for malaria and other diseases, so goes the rest of the world. And the best example of that has been the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Whatever the U.S. does, the rest of the world takes their cue from the U.S. government, and it's usually where the U.S. government provides 30% of the funding, and then everybody else backs into what their share will be. So it's not just what happens to the U.S. budget when Congress and the administration makes a decision about health intervention and global health. It's the ripple effect that it has across the world. And the U.S. has been the leader in technology funding and continues to do so even today with our constrained budget. And we really need the sustaining support of the U.S. government because it impacts and influences what the rest of the world will do. And that's not only with regard to the traditional donors, but the new donor countries like China and Korea and Brazil. So whatever the U.S. government does really impacts what will happen throughout the world.
Thank you so much for joining us today.